What's up, gentlemen? This is Rising Phoenix Podcast, the podcast about how to rise up after your divorce. I'm your host, Michael Rhodes. Let's get into it. Okay, joining me today is Annette. Annette, let's just jump right into it. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, thanks for having me on. And for the purpose of our time together, to keep it brief, what you want to probably know about me is that I have been in the wellness industry for easily 20 odd years now. I'm a massage therapist, a yoga teacher. I'm a doula, which means I help women give birth. I work with aromatherapy. In general, I'm a wild ass meat eater who hugs trees and wants to help people. In this case, definitely, I'm looking to help men sort of settle down, get their shit together, and feel like they have their shit together so that they can go back out into the world from a place of strength and clarity. You've been very generous with how you describe your work, which is to say that, the journey, generally what would be a surprise journey, like, hey, by the way, we're getting a divorce, is something that there's not a lot of mentorship around how to do that well, how to do it graciously, or to even find the pockets of gratitude that might exist in what is a shit show, essentially.
Sure is.
For most people. Yeah. And so that's a synopsis of what I do and why I'm with you today.
Well, thank you for joining me. And the piece that brought me to you is the yoga piece of this. And I know from a lot of sources, including The Body Keeps the Score, which is an excellent book I'd recommend to anybody, that yoga is very beneficial to healing from trauma. So I want to talk about that specifically. What is trauma-informed yoga?
So trauma-informed yoga is really the effort to bring the practitioner into the felt sense of the now, so that the body can actually feel what it's feeling, understand how to process, understand, which is, it's better to use the word comprehend, right? Because understanding is very much logic and logos, which is much more of A follows B plus C equals D, and these things come in a regular pattern. Comprehension is a much more, I'm going to use a big word, but metonomic, which simply means, like, when I say to you dog, you might think hot dog, wiener dog, right, black dog, big dog, little dog, different types of dogs, dog like a guy that chases a lot of women, right, associative. So comprehension is when you're in the body and you comprehend the range of experience that you have, versus storytelling from the past or about the future. And when we stay in the physical sensation, we can stay in the now and ultimately start to take that comprehension into an integrated understanding. And that is where we short circuit the likelihood of the brain and the body being hijacked by what we would call an inability to stay in your window of modulation. So I can get very complex on this, but
let's do it.
Okay, so the window of modulation is when your nervous system is in a balanced state that allows you to access what's known as your prefrontal cortex. It's not known as, it is your prefrontal cortex. So your prefrontal cortex is where you have what's known as executive function. This is where you can plan things in a linear time fashion. It's where you do you make decisions based on real-time information. It's also where you do big concept thinking. It's where you can understand nuance and subtlety while also making specific decisions. This is different than your hindbrain, which is where you're in more of what's known as a sympathetic state, where you just need to know, and I hope you don't mind, I'm very plain spoken. Is this something that I need to fuck, fight, flee from, freeze, is this somebody that I got to try to figure out how I can get what I need by what's known as fawn? So there's now in the literature, we're seeing the fourth response. So fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. The fourth, fawning, is where you're trying to keep somebody happy so they don't whoop your ass, basically.
Right.
And so fawning is people pleasing to an extreme,
Got
where
it.
you literally are subjugating all your own needs with the hopes that you can control the person in your environment that's really tearing shit up. So trauma-informed yoga brings you back into, what am I feeling right now? And you stay inside that window of modulation where you can decision make, which is known as discernment. Do I do this thing or not? Do I head in that direction or a different direction? Is this a priority I have versus a reflexive, reactive behavior, which is what we would call the hindbrain. So the switch here between hindbrain survival mechanism, just trying to get you, trying to not fall apart,
Yep.
and trying to stay in the executive function aspect of your brain, is the breath. So I just want to be really clear, yoga as a practice can be, and it has a huge range to it. So someone could be doing breath work where their ass is in a chair and they're not moving at all, and they're doing breath work and they're being guided. And this is a way to stay present and be able to create a pathway, a consistent pathway to decision making versus reflexive behavior. On that same spectrum, we can go all the way out to like a power class where you're moving, sweating, grinding, working really physically hard, and it's still guided by the breath. And as a result, these two spectrums, this idea that you can be non-moving, moving the breath, being present in the body as it is, because breath work brings up a lot, all the way over to here where you're like, I think I'm going to die from the amount of physical exertion that I'm making right now.
Right.
This means that yoga can meet everybody. So all your listeners, I don't care how old, how young, how healthy, how bendy, how not bendy, there is a path through the yogic practice for everyone to get more complete, more whole discernment. And then finally, what I would call, and these are more yogic or Buddhist terms, skillful means. This is where, one of the ways I describe it is, instead of, if your hair's on fire and the only thing you can see is a hammer and you use that to put your hair out of fire, this is not skillful means. This is survival behavior.
Right.
If you're like, my hair's on fire and I need to get to water, this is more skillful means.
Right.
So where we can use skillful means and discernment is about that executive function, which is where we have curtailed the likelihood of our own nervous system hijacking our ability to be present and capable of making the best decisions with the best information we have on hand.
Gotcha. Okay. So let me, as a simpleton, let me try and translate for myself, because this shit is complicated, but I love it. The more complex, the better. That gives me an opportunity to try and figure out how to explain it in a way that I understand. And I hope that translates. So you're distraught and you're feeling very alone. You're crying. Yes, you're miserable, right? So
yeah.
It sounds like there's two parts to this, I guess, at least in my head. One of them is to be able to actually feel the feelings in the body, right? And in terms of like, I am miserable. What am I feeling? Is it my headaching? Is it my shoulders are tight and tense? Is it my stomach is in knots? Like, is that part of it, to like slowing down and figuring out what, okay, I'm miserable, I miss her, but what is my body feeling? Is that sort of step one?
Absolutely. So step one is, what do you feel? I'm going to urge you to think feeling, define feeling as even more. So you're using the word, I feel miserable, I miss her, I miss this person that was in my life. So we can leave it that nebulous. I feel, but I would go and say, like, what does missing feel like in your body?
Right.
Is that you feel hot in your stomach? You feel cold? You feel, like constriction, or you're too blown out? You don't even know where your physical body is? Like, what
Right.
feels tight? What feels loose? What feels numb?
Right.
Because numbness is a feeling.
Yes.
And so, and a lot of times, again, I allow me to say, I have a lot to say, but I feel deeply a state of frustration for the masculine, right? Because we have, in our culture, we've relegated you to really only sort of a slight variation on one experience, which is anger.
Yes.
So unless you've gotten some mentorship, most men can either be, I'm not talking about this, I'm angry and I'm not going to do it.
Yes.
Or all the way to this is still the same expression of anger, absolute rupture, where you're like, I'm fucking out of here. And I'm never going to see you. I'm never going to see your friends. I'm never going to see your family. I make a complete break because I'm so angry that I have no way to deal with any of that anger.
Yep.
And what yoga can do, and what a great yoga practice does, is lets you get into that, feel that, dissipate it, and feel what else might be in the mix.
Gotcha.
So it might be that underneath the anger is grief, which is a different feeling state.
Sure. And
underneath grief might be frustration, might be a sense of lack of worth. Yeah. It might be, and I'm just going to say it, a lack of self-validation, an inability to stand up for what you want to say in a way that doesn't make you a dickhead, right? Because there's still, just because you have feelings doesn't mean that you can verbal diarrhea all over someone. So again, there's this constant state of yoga gives us a chance to feel it, integrate it, and hopefully learn some skills to also say, like, because the more you can illuminate for someone else, what do you actually feel? Because the vast majority of the time, I hear this from my female friends that are in relationships. They want to know what men feel. They want to know. And yet at the same time, because we as a collective have never developed for the masculine good language around feeling state, unfortunately, it's really easy to say this. We told you not to cry. Big boys don't cry.
100%.
Right? Big boys don't cry. You better control that anger, Johnny. That's not nice.
Yeah.
So we at the same time don't give you clear paths of language. So you're going to relearn or learn all over how to say, like, my stomach is tight because I didn't hear from you for 4 hours and I don't know what's going on, and my mind's telling stories and my body's getting more and more contracted, and then I have to deal with that feeling of contraction that makes me more tense. Right. And when I finally come to you, I'm ready to fucking blow up.
Right.
But if a man could say that before the actual action takes place, we might be able to diffuse it.
Yeah, true.
And a skillful, equally, if you're met with an equally caring verbal female, she might say, like, man, I didn't know that responding to you in that time frame was this important. I do now.
Yeah.
Let me try to get there with you.
Yeah, and that's the shit of good relationships, which seem to be few and far between in this current society. But that's another topic for another time. But okay, so feeling it in your body, describing it, allows it to dissipate, because what's happening, and again, this is a layman speaking, is your hindbrain, as you said, is firing, and it's sending out energy and chemicals and stress hormones and all these things, and you have to do something with it, and something with it, at least part of it, is describing it in your body so you sort of can release it, which sounds kind of woo-woo, but like, I've done it and I know how it is and I know how it feels.
No, this is the thing that is beautiful about yoga and breath work, and they are one and the same in so many ways, is that even if you don't go into a yoga class clear with this intent, the amount of movement that will take place, the flexing and the movement of the body will create in and of itself, even without conscious intent, it'll create a heightened state of intelligence and integration and an off-gassing of what we would call, and I'm going to use this loosely, an off-gassing of negative emotion. In other words, you will process some of that shit just by moving the body. Yeah. If you go in consciously and this is the difference between yoga and trauma-informed yoga. In a nutshell, if you go in and you say, you know what, I want to access more acutely, I want to expedite this process. So I'm going to pay attention to what I feel like instead of egoically efforting all just to be a powerhouse through your class. If you slow down just enough and back off thinking that you have to be Bobby Big Shits all the time, and you just access, like, how does this feel to me? I'm moving with my breath, and I want to know what I feel. And you listen. That's trauma-informed yoga. And it starts to heal the trauma. Even if you don't arrive at any actual answers, you don't have to think that anything big is going to happen. What's going to happen is your chemical cascade is going to clear up some shit for you that you won't get to if you just kept your ass tacked to your couch or your Barca lounger.
Yeah, right. And so the other part of that is, you sort of described it just then, is it's you're getting out of your hind brain, you're getting out of your brain and sort of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, and you're starting to be able to process it in a, as you said, executive type of way. And so you can maybe take a step back and see that this isn't the end of the world. She wasn't perfect. She had a fuck ton of red flags that become apparent when you're able to sort of get out of that fight or flight, freeze, fawn response, right?
Or conversely, you did too, right?
Sure.
Maybe you are actually a hot fucking mess, and so was she.
That's
right. In fairness.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I mean, that's a key part of it, and I don't want to interrupt you, but I say this all the time, and I hope guys get the message. But you're 100% responsible for 50%. Period. End of story. That's it.
So I think that's really a beautiful piece of integrity and accountability, because it takes two to dance, brother.
It has to be that way.
Right. And we could, I am definitely someone that, I know some crazy bitches, and I'm sorry if you married her. Right. And I also know some dickheads, and
Sure.
I'm sorry if my friends marry you.
Yep.
So it's only fair to say we're all coming to the show with healing work to do.
Yep.
And in the, some of my best mentors in my neurobiology, in the trauma informed, all of it are like, what you want to find in partnership is the right, wrong person. And what does that mean? You end up with somebody that's ready to work it out with you. Mm-hmm. They will, in fact, what makes them the right, wrong person is they will elicit some bullshit from you.
Yes.
And they will stay with you while you tighten it up. No. And same you for them. Right? So there is no perfect. No. There's only just willingness and curiosity. And if we can get those two things in somebody that you also think smells good and looks good enough to ask them to take their clothes off once in a while, you're on the right track.
Amen. I couldn't have said it any better. So let's talk about some of the other benefits of maybe yoga in general or trauma-informed yoga. What are some of the other things that are beneficial to doing these types of things?
So yoga as a whole is going to improve heart rate variability, which is one of the ways that we know baseline health improves. It's going to increase your lung capacity. These are, of course, critical things for, this thing we call living. So like good breath, good physical movement always reduces basically the poor indicators. So if you have high blood pressure, It helps lower blood pressure. If you have stress and tension that's causing a negative cascade of cortisol, it's going to bring that back into a regulation, right? Cortisol, we know that that's the beginning of the HPA axis. So the hypothalamus, pituitary, and the adrenal axis. So we have the HPA axis that then starts to change your immune function. So the other thing that is harder to quantify, but is very much part of the gift of yoga, is being in community. So you're in the room with some other people that want to be around people.
Yeah.
And that want to be a better person, and that want to have a resonance with the people around them. This is a pretty strong gift. And, you know, it's for me, akin to going to church, going to service, right? So you get into community, and there are innumerable benefits of just knowing that you're not alone in the world. Mm-hmm. And in a great yoga class, especially trauma informed, there isn't a emphasis on good vibes only, because that sort of person I want to drive a nail through that motherfucker's head. I'm like, when is it good vibes only? Like, that's so unrealistic. It's just, I mean, I have good days, but I also have bad days.
Amen.
And I'm even somebody, and I would say that I'm somebody that makes an effort to lean toward predisposing myself toward good days. So I try to get great sleep. I try to eat. I make sure to stay hydrated. I move, which is one of the things, you know, so there's all these things that can predispose you to the likelihood of a better day. And yet, you know, you get a flat tire, you run late, you fuck something up, you make a mistake. And so being in a yoga class where the teacher or the tenor of the class is like, we're here to breathe, to be alive, to be together, that's going to be a game changer also. So this is really important and harder to quantify than to be able to point to, you know, I lowered my blood pressure today. You did. Right. Part of what did happen was a non-quantifiable, which is that you came into union, because really that's what yoga means, is to yoke or to create union. And so especially for people that are going through what I would say is a difficult time in your life, getting into a group, you don't have to offer like, hi, my name is Bob and I'm going through a divorce and like, I'm really sad. You don't have to say that shit. You just have to be on the mat.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed.
And so
I want to go back to you mentioned a window. It's not window of tolerance. I forget what you called it.
Modulation.
Modulation.
Mm-hmm.
And part of yoga is sort of consistent yoga practice, I'm assuming, and I'll get to what that means, but is it sort of widening that window so you can tolerate more shit, for lack of a better description?
Absolutely. So the window of tolerance on the bottom end is where we are in what we would call depression, hypo. And so you're depressed, you're flat, your emotions, you're like, meh, whatever.
Right.
And you really mean it. You know, you're like, fuck it, I don't care.
Yeah.
And then on the other end is where you're so like squirrel on crack, like just everywhere and can't control it. And you're just like, I got 7,000 things to do. Back to that image of, you know, your hair's on fire and all you have is a hammer. That sort of insanity where you can't make a decision because you can't keep your mind still long enough to make a decision. So that's the top end and the bottom end. So hyper and hypo. In the middle is where you're experiencing resiliency. You still get a push one way or the other. You might have real physical fatigue and you're just not able to, you're not excitable. This is actually a good thing to be in that almost what I would call the brackish space, which is, if you need some energy, you can get it. You can pick it up and go out and do what you got to do. Or if you're like, you know what, it's pretty chill. You're not anxious about being chill. Now, this is a space that we only hope to occupy with greater and greater frequency over time. And that is where your practice comes in. So what I would say is that we start to understand ourselves when you really feel into your body. So for some of your guys, they're going to realize that, you know what's really going on? I'm tired. I've been trying, working, I've been grinding. And I just want to say, you might have been trying, working, grinding at all the wrong fucking things, but it doesn't mean that you weren't working, trying, and grinding.
Right.
So you're fatigued. So maybe you get on the mat and you're like, holy shit, man, you know what I am? Tired. I'm actually tired. But you're in the window of modulation to recognize that you're down here in the physical fatigue, and the emotional fatigue follows it. And as long as you say like, wow, then what do I need to do about that? You may need more sleep. You may need to back off the caffeine and use other ways to find energy. There's lots of conversation here to be had, but in that window of modulation, as you practice, you start to develop greater and greater skills, a bigger tool bag that you can reach into when you can feel, hey, I'm fatigued. I'm physically fatigued. I'm starting to be emotionally fatigued. I need to address this before it runs me. And that's part of what the feeling on the mat is. That's why you go to a yoga practice, so you can actually feel, where am I in my own being? And what now do I want to do about what I find? Because you may say, or you may be up here in the high window of, you may be like, man, I've been getting great sleep. I've been pooping like a champ. I've been eating like a champ. I'm up here. I have a lot to offer somebody. Maybe I should go work for Habitat for Humanity on the weekends to give some of this vitality away and feel like I'm also being of service. And maybe it's time for me to start dating again because I feel full. Right?
Yeah.
But if you don't check in, you don't have a gauge of what do you need to do next. And that level of clarity doesn't come when you're flat affect or squirrel crack.
Yeah.
You got to get in here to say like, okay, what is actually happening for me? And that is that this is why yoga, I believe, trauma informed or just go to a yoga class is going to be the gift, because they're in the yoga world, unlike, let's say, cycling or CrossFit. I'm not knocking either of these two things. The unique piece is that yoga says, let's slow down enough to be mindful. Let's attend to our breath. Let's attend to what we feel. And for some guys, that sounds really, really, really dangerous because they've never been allowed to do it. Yeah. And so they might find that they're fucking pissed, or that they're grieving, or that they, I don't know. There's a lot of things that can happen when you slow down.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to talk about, so being more mindful of where you're at, that's a benefit in terms of where you're. So in other words, if you feel, oh man, my shoulders are really tense, and you notice that and you recognize that, you can go, oh shit, I'm stressed. And so I should avoid things to add to that stress. Or this is the part that I'm interested in. What do I do to counteract that, so to speak? So I know I'm really stressed. Do I go sign up for a class? Is there some simple, quick exercises to do to help me de-stress? Is it just breath work? And I want to focus on stress specifically because it's a bitch for everybody. What are some things that someone can do when they notice in that moment, like, oh, I'm stressed out. What do I do?
So I would say definitely, there's literally, you can, let's say you feel your shoulders, you can just begin to do, move anytime that you're thinking, wow, I feel tension, move it. Doesn't matter. You can, jump up and down. It literally just move for a few minutes. And I mean a minute, 30 seconds to a minute, and then rest and go again. And if you're like, okay, wow, this is painful. Of course you have a couple options. Sign up for a class, go that day. You don't have to. And again, I just want to emphasize this because I can't emphasize it enough. You don't go to yoga once you're flexible. Don't wait until you're flexible. Don't wait until you're in shape. Don't wait until you got it right. That never happens. go and just start your practice, whatever it's going to be. You might end up just laying on the mat for your first go round. Have the ball sack to do that. And then the second thing is, of course, you can also get body work. And I know that both of these things require some money. So you may have to school your resources, you may have to budget, and you may have to budget your time. But I would say, and I'm just saying this because I believe this to be true. I live this in my own body. I'm not saying this and not doing it. Sometimes I run out of time and it's 8 o'clock at night and there's no yoga class. Go for a 20-minute walk. Watch your breath come into your body as you walk. Watch your breath come out of your body as you walk. Don't put music in. Listen to your own breath. Don't listen to a podcast. Go for a walk and just let yourself breathe and feel the breath. Now, for some people, they're going to be like, this is stupid. It feels that way to start.
Sure.
But it's a type of walking, moving meditation. You don't have to slow down. You don't have to be a monk. Just pay attention to your breath. Literally, my breath is coming in. Look at that. My breath is going out. Here it comes in again.
Right.
I'm breathing. 10 minutes, 15, 20. It's a game changer.
Yeah, agreed. I try to do it myself. I've slacked a little bit recently, but I try to do something 20 minutes every day. I want to talk about what a yoga class looks like. What kind of length are we talking? What do we need to take and where? And just for guys, it's like, I don't know what the fuck is yoga? I don't even know what it is. I don't know what you do. So let's just sort of give the basics.
Yeah, great question. So most studios, and I'm going to say most because there's always somebody that's an outlier, but the vast majority of the studios, and I'm talking like 98%, you'll bring a yoga mat that you can get at Target or Walmart for $10. You can spend a shit ton of money on these things if you want to, but you don't have to. Get yourself a $10 yoga mat. They're usually 6 feet, 6 inches in length, 32 inches wide. So it looks like a little rug. You bring that thing with you, or you can usually rent a mat at a yoga studio, usually. But let's say you go to Walmart, you spend your 10, your 15, your $16, whatever it is, you get yourself a mat. You're going to walk through the doors of a studio. They'll ask you to set up probably an account or a profile where you give them your name. Usually they want your cell phone number and probably your email address. They'll have you sign what's known as a liability waiver. This one is fun. This is where you basically say, if I die doing yoga, I knew it and I'm fine with it. Right. As of yet, no one in my studio has ever died doing yoga. And I've been in the yoga and fitness industry for 18 years now. So, I mean, it may happen someday, but it hasn't happened yet.
Right. So
you sign a liability waiver, you take off your shoes and your socks. So for some men, they didn't know, so nobody told them. So you take your shoes and your socks off. You usually go into a room that has pretty much nothing in it. There'll be maybe blocks, which are literally, they look like blocks. They're made out of a heavy styrofoam. Bolsters, which look like just cushions. They're just cushions. Sometimes they're straps, and they literally are a 6-inch or a 4-inch strap, because some people use them to improve their flexibility. And that's about it. And then there'll be a yoga teacher. 80% of the time, it'll be a female. About 20% of the time, it'll be a dude. You'll put your yoga mat out. You'll sit on it. And then the teacher will start class. Most classes are a minimum of 45 minutes. Some of them are as much as 90. The average is 60. So the average class is a 60-minute class. Most teachers, and now I'm going to get super technical just so that I can give you a real piece. Most teachers will spend the first 7 to 10 minutes warming you up. So gentle movements. You'll spend the next 35 minutes doing progressively more complex or challenging postures. Postures are the words or asana. So asana is another word for posture or shape. And then you'll spend the last 15 to 7 minutes, depending on the style of teaching, doing what's known as a cool down. And then you'll spend somewhere between 2 and 5 minutes in what's known as Shavasana. And that is where you lay on your back and you literally just lay there and let your body integrate what's just happened. Now, if you're in a heated class, you're going to sweat like a whore in church. Some of you will sweat that way when you're in a non-heated class, and it's perfectly okay. And then basically the class, they'll usually say something like, you know, namaste, and they'll bow, and there'll be some sort of almost like similar to, but not exactly like a prayer that closes the time that you spent together. And then you walk back out into the lobby, you get your shoes, you get your socks, you go home, and you wonder what the fuck just happened.
That sounds like a pretty accurate description. Well, there was a ton of information here, and anything that involves the brain and prefrontal cortex and the flight, freeze, and fawn, and all those responses. To me, it's fascinating shit. It's knowledge that's I think it's necessary in general, but I think during these difficult times, if you are going through a divorce, I think it's even more helpful because it provides clarity to why you're behaving the way you're behaving. It's because your brain is doing certain things, and mostly it's to protect you.
Yeah,
So,
your neural network is likely in a state of disruption. So decision making is generally disrupted. A state of equanimity, meaning that you feel balanced, is usually not present. And or it'll come and go again. You know, like you'll be like, I'm fine. And then you're like, fuck me, I don't know whether I'm up or down.
yeah, it's a very common thing for sure.
Yeah. So you want, and I was about to say, you know, this is going to sound very feminine, but it's really human, which is to say, be gentle with yourself. Like you're going through something that's disruptive. The opportunity, however, is huge.
Yeah.
Because you've been disrupted, because you're in a state of like, what I thought I had going on has just died. You can bring to life a new aspect of your being. And I know that sounds sort of namby-pamby, but the truth is, here's your chance, right? You want to be a different man? Be a different man. Learn some skills.
Yeah.
Figure out how to be a better communicator. Stand with integrity and accountability in what matters to you.
No, agreed.
Be the partner you want to be.
And that kind of leads to the last question, and you may end up repeating yourself, and that's totally fine because good things bear repeating, as I say often. What are some this is the last question I ask everybody. What are some words of wisdom you would impart to a man who just started his process? He just got served, he just got told, I'm leaving, or you need to move out, or whatever. What are some words of wisdom you would impart to that particular man?
Know that you're not alone. Know that you will be all right in time. It does not, in all likelihood, feel remotely good right now. And yet this may be the greatest gift that's come your way. And while that sounds like utter shit, try to stay away from making big sweeping decisions because you're not in a place in your neural network, in your heart, to reorganize everything right now. So take it a little bit at a time. Be honest with yourself about how you do feel. Cultivate some new tools. Be kind to yourself when you make the inevitable fuck ups because they're coming. Have the courage to be vulnerable. And while I say that, I don't mean that with your coworkers or your boss. Have the courage to be vulnerable with your closest friends, your, trusted confidants. Start to build an ability to be honest about where you are, what's happening for you, for yourself, and then for others in your life. Movement is intelligence. So whenever you feel fucking stupid, go move. Doesn't matter what you do. I don't care if it's CrossFit. I don't care if it's swimming. I don't care if it's bow hunting. Just don't stagnate, because you will become stagnant in the heart, and that's horrible. So my honest to God prescription is slow down, get better sleep, eat better, take better care of yourself, drink a lot of water, spend time in the company of people that you do care for and that care for you in return. Don't spend stupid amounts of money on something that you think is going to make you feel powerful or confident again. The only thing that's going to do that is your heart. Show up. You can show up looking like a shit show. It's better than not showing up. Just show up. And then stay with it, and it's going to change.
Agreed. Well, Annette, thank you so very much for this. This was awesome, and I appreciate your time, your wisdom, your insight. How can people find you? What's the best way to get in touch with Annette?
Kodawari Studios is where I spend at least half my life. So kodawaristudios.com, and that's KODAWARI studios.com. And then I'm on Instagram, Annette K. Scott, and Kodawari Studios is on Instagram, Kodawari Studios. And I'm on Facebook and as both Annette K. Scott and Kodawari Studios. So I'm out there, I'm in the world, you can find me. I'm obnoxiously present.
Well, thank you for that, because that's how I found you. I found you on Instagram, and again, I'm so appreciative. I think this conversation is so important, and I hope that it helps. I think it will, if guys will take some of this insight and some of this knowledge to heart. I think it absolutely can help them to get through the shit show that is divorce.
Yeah, last thing I would offer also, just because I think it's another tool, is sauna, SAUNA, sauna. Heat and cold contrast. That's one way to wring your body out and to get really present. We have one at the studio. I think it's an amazing tool. It's the same concept. Increase your window of modulation. Be in the body. Open up. Try new things. You want to get right. This is one of the ways. So body work, yoga, sauna. Take care of yourself, and hopefully, if you're in the Tampa Bay area, your people, come and see us.
Right on. Thank you so much, Annette. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, take care.
All right.
Thank you so much for watching and or listening. Thank you to Nick Coyle and Lifer for allowing me to use their song, Born Again, which you're hearing now and at the intro to the podcast. Thank you to Justin Dulahanty and all of my brothers at the Alpha Code. Please visit the website, risingphoenixpodcast.com, to connect with me and other like-minded men who are looking to thrive and grow after their divorce. And remember to surround yourself with people who add value to your life, who challenge you to be greater than you were yesterday, who sprinkle magic into your existence like you do to theirs. Life is not meant to be done alone. Find your tribe. Take care.